Hi, my name's Lily, and I'm 8 years old. Well, 8.5, if we're being exact, which I think we should be. I love chocolate chip cookies, and I've got this stuffed bunny named Mr. Whiskers who's been with me since forever. He's got one floppy ear and a little stitched smile, and he's my best friend. But the thing I love most? My mom and dad. Except, here's the problem, they don't live together anymore. They split up when I was 6, and now I'm like a little bird flying back and forth between Mom's cozy yellow house with the creaky porch swing and Dad's tiny apartment that smells like motor oil and old pizza boxes. It's not awful, but it's not the same. I miss how things used to be, you know? Like when we'd all pile onto the couch with a giant bowl of popcorn, watching silly movies, or when Mom would sing off-key in the kitchen while Dad spun her around like they were in some fancy dance. Those were the best days, and I want them back so bad it makes my tummy hurt sometimes. At school, kids talk about their moms and dads doing stuff together, like going to the zoo or having big dinners, and I just sit there, hugging Mr. Whiskers under my desk, wishing I could say the same. Mom's got this big, bubbly laugh that makes everyone smile, and she's a nurse who's always helping people feel better. Dad's quieter, with scratchy whiskers on his chin and hands that can fix any car, like he's a magician for machines. They're the best, but they don't see it anymore. So, one night, while I was snuggled under my blanket with Mr. Whiskers, I decided I'd be the one to fix it. I would bring them back together, no matter what it took. "Mr. Whiskers," I whispered, holding him up so his button eyes stared at me, "we're gonna make Mom and Dad fall in love again. You in?" He didn't say anything, bunnies don't talk, duh, but I knew he was with me. I had no idea how twisty things would get, though. It is like when you're drawing a picture and the crayons go all wonky on you. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start at the beginning of my big plan. My plan started with cookies, chocolate chip ones, because they're Mom and Dad's favorite. Back when we were a real family, we'd bake them together every Sunday. Mom would sneak extra chocolate chips when Dad wasn't looking, and he would pretend to be mad, but then he'd tickle her until she laughed so hard she'd snort. It was perfect. So, I figured if I could get them baking together again, they'd remember all that happy stuff. I told Mom I wanted to bake at her house, and she said, "Sure, sweetie, let's make a mess." Then I called Dad and said, Mom's car's acting funny, and she needs your help." Okay, that was a tiny lie, her car was fine, but I crossed my fingers behind my back, which makes it less bad, right? He grumbled, "All right, Lilybug, I'll be there," and I did a little happy dance with Mr. Whiskers. I could picture it, them laughing over cookie dough, maybe even holding hands. But then everything went sideways. Dad showed up with his toolbox, looking all serious, and Mom opened the door in her nurse scrubs, her hair in a messy bun. They stared at each other for a second, and I thought, this is it. But then, bam, Mom's new boyfriend, Greg, walked in behind her. Greg's tall and smiles too much, and he's nice enough, I guess, but he's not Dad. I muttered to Mr. Whiskers, this wasn't supposed to happen. Mom said, "Oh, Greg just stopped by to say hi," and Dad's face went all stiff, like when you bite into a sour candy. I tried to fix it by shoving a mixing bowl at them, saying, "Let's make cookies, all of us." But it was so awkward. Dad kept fiddling with his wrench, and Mom kept talking too fast about nothing, like how the oven's timer was broken. "Hey, Dad," I said, tugging his sleeve, "remember when we made cookies and you got flour in your hair?" He smiled a tiny bit and said, "Yeah, your mom called me a snowman." Mom giggled, "You were a snowman." And for a second, it felt right, until Greg said, "I like oatmeal cookies better," and ruined it. Things got worse when the cookies burned. I was so busy watching them argue quietly by the sink, Dad saying, "I didn't know you had company," and Mom snapping, "It's not like that," that I forgot to set the timer. Smoke filled the kitchen, and I started crying. I just wanted us to be happy. Mom dropped her spatula, and Dad put down his wrench, and they both hugged me at the same time. Their arms bumped, and I could feel them freeze, like they remembered how they fit together. I whispered to Mr. Whiskers, "Maybe this isn't over yet." But I knew I had to try harder. After the cookie disaster, I needed a bigger idea. One day, while I was digging under my bed for a lost sock, I found a box of old stuff, pictures, ticket stubs, and this crinkly letter from Dad to Mom. It was from before I was born, and it said stuff like, "You're my forever, Jenny," that's Mom's name, and, "I'd give you the moon if I could." My eyes got all watery reading it, because it was so sweet, like a fairy tale. I decided to sneak it into Mom's purse so she'd find it and remember how much Dad loved her. I told Mr. Whiskers, "This is gonna work, I can feel it." But, oh boy, did I mess up. Greg found the letter first. He thought it was new, like Dad wrote it yesterday, and he got all mad, waving it in Mom's face, saying, "What's this, Jenny?" Mom looked confused, then mad, and I hid behind the couch, whispering, "Oops." Dad walked in right then, bad timing, and heard everything. His voice got low and shaky, "You think I'd do that?" And Mom yelled, "I don't know what to think." It was a big, loud mess, and I felt like I'd broken everything worse. "Lily," Mom said later, sitting me down, "did you put that letter in my purse?" I nodded, sniffling, "I just wanted you to be happy." She hugged me and said, "Oh, sweetie, love's not that simple." But I saw her tuck the letter into her pocket, not the trash, so maybe she wasn't that mad. I didn't give up, though. I planned a picnic at the park, PB&J sandwiches, lemonade, the works. I invited Mom and Dad, saying, "It's for a school project." Another tiny fib, and secretly told Greg too, thinking he'd see how perfect Mom and Dad were together and back off. They started talking about old times, like when Dad proposed with a daisy because he was too broke for a ring. Mom laughed, "You were so nervous you dropped it," and Dad grinned, "You still said yes." I saw their hands almost touch on the picnic blanket, and my heart went boom boom boom. But then Greg showed up, and, get this, Dad said, "Oh, Sarah's coming too." Sarah's his new girlfriend. I didn't even know he had one. She walked up, all tall and pretty, and I wanted to disappear into the grass. It turned into a big tangle, Greg asking Mom questions, Sarah chatting with Dad, and me stuck in the middle, kicking pebbles. I heard Mom tell Greg, "I'm not sure about us," and I got hopeful, but then Sarah hugged Dad, and I couldn't take it. I ran off crying, "This isn't how it's supposed to be." Mom and Dad chased me to a big tree, and I sobbed, "I just want us to be a family." They hugged me so tight I could feel their hearts beating, and Dad said, "You're our everything, Lilybug." Mom nodded, "Always." I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd see what I saw. Right when I thought it couldn't get crazier, the sky decided to join in. A huge rainstorm crashed down on the park, soaking us all. I shrieked, "My sandwiches," and we ran to a little gazebo thingy. Greg and Sarah grumbled and left, but Mom and Dad stayed with me. We were dripping wet, and Mom started laughing, "We look like drowned rats." Dad chuckled, remember that camping trip when the tent leaked? She nodded. You kept me warm anyway. They were smiling at each other, and I held my breath, clutching Mr. Whiskers. Then Dad said, real quiet, I never stopped loving you, Jenny. Mom's eyes got big, and she whispered, I kept that daisy ring, you know. I wanted to cheer, but I stayed super still, like I was invisible. They didn't kiss or anything, grown-ups are slow sometimes, but I could tell something big was happening. Back at Mom's house, drying off, I accidentally played our old family song on my speaker. Dad held out his hand and said, dance with me? Mom hesitated, then smiled, okay, just one. I peeked from the hallway, whispering to Mr. Whiskers, look at them. Later, I saw Dad's wallet on the table. It fell open, and there was a picture of him, Mom, and me as a baby. He'd been carrying it all this time. I ran to Mom and said, he still loves you. She looked surprised, but then she smiled, soft and sad. That night, they sat me down and said, we're gonna try to figure things out, Lily, for you, and maybe for us. I hugged them so hard I almost squished Mr. Whiskers, and I knew it wasn't perfect yet, but it was a start. So, that's how I sorta fixed my family. I'm not saying I'm a genius or anything, though Mr. Whiskers thinks I am, but I did something pretty cool. Mom and Dad talk more now, and sometimes I catch them smiling at each other when they think I'm not looking. I don't know if they'll live together again, but I've got hope, and hope's like a big, warm cookie you can hold on to. Thanks for listening to my story. Oh, and if you liked it, hit that subscribe button. Me and Mr. Whiskers would love to tell you more adventures someday.